Avant-garde fashion is a term that often evokes bold, experimental designs that push boundaries, question norms, and challenge the status quo. It is, in essence, fashion that moves away from tradition, embracing creativity and innovation at its core. The history of avant-garde fashion is deeply intertwined with cultural, artistic, and social movements, often reflecting shifts in art, politics, and technology. Let's explore the evolution of avant-garde fashion, its origins, key figures, and how it has influenced the industry over time. The term avant-garde itself comes from the French military term for advance guard, referring to the group that leads an army into battle. In the context of art and fashion, it refers to those pushing forward new, experimental ideas, breaking away from the mainstream. Avant-garde fashion first started gaining prominence in the early 20th century, paralleling developments in other avant-garde art movements such as Dadaism, Futurism, and Surrealism. These movements were all about rejecting traditional forms and embracing abstraction, distortion, and new, often radical ways of thinking. Fashion was no exception to these broader cultural shifts. In the 1910s and 1920s, avant-garde movements in art, such as Futurism and Surrealism, began influencing the world of fashion. Designers were increasingly looking to break free from the constraints of traditional tailoring and garment construction. Futurism, which emphasized speed, modernity, and industrial progress, saw designers incorporating geometric shapes and synthetic fabrics into their collections. Italian futurist designer Haute, Ernesto Michaelis, and Filippo Tommaso Marinetti, the founder of Futurism, created designs that envisioned a future where clothing could be utilitarian and futuristic, rejecting the old ways of dressing. Surrealism, with its focus on the unconscious mind and dreamlike imagery, also found its place in fashion, particularly in the work of Elsa Schiaparelli. Schiaparelli, a pioneer of surrealist fashion, famously collaborated with artists like Salvador Dalí and Jean Cocteau. She created playful and imaginative designs such as the Lobster dress, a dress with a large painted lobster on the skirt, and the shoe hat that brought surreal art into the realm of everyday wear. These designs were whimsical and unpredictable, challenging the norms of how women were expected to dress. After World War II, fashion was in a state of flux, and designers began looking for new ways to express modernity. This period saw the rise of designers who rejected the extravagant excesses of the pre-war era and looked toward a more minimalist, structured approach, while still embracing avant-garde concepts. One significant figure from this period is Christian Dior, whose New Look collection of 1947 brought a drastic departure from the austerity of wartime fashion. While Dior's designs were more traditional in their structure, wide skirts and small waists, they still represented a break from the wartime utilitarianism. However, many young designers at the time were eager to create something that rejected conventionality entirely, and this spirit would give rise to the more radical avant-garde movements that followed. The 1960s and 1970s were a transformative time for avant-garde fashion, heavily influenced by the broader cultural shifts happening around the world. The rise of youth countercultures, protests against the Vietnam War, the civil rights movement, and the sexual revolution all contributed to a more radical, individualistic approach to fashion. In this climate, Pierre Cardin, Yves Saint Laurent, and Jean-Paul Gaultier became some of the key figures in pushing fashion forward. Pierre Cardin, for instance, was known for creating space-age, geometric designs that reflected the technological optimism of the time. He embraced new materials, like plastics and synthetic fibers, in his collections, which were starkly futuristic in their look. Yves Saint Laurent, known for his Le Smoking tuxedo suit for women in 1966, transformed fashion by allowing women to express themselves through traditionally masculine clothing. This subverted the gender norms of the time and showcased the blending of power and elegance. Meanwhile, Paul Gaultier, often hailed as one of the most innovative avant-garde designers, rose to prominence in the 1980s with his bold and unconventional take on fashion. Known for creating gender-fluid designs, using corsetry in modern ways, and blending elements of street style with high fashion, Gaultier redefined what was possible in fashion. His collections, such as the famous cone bras worn by Madonna, created controversy but also pushed the boundaries of how clothing could be perceived in the mainstream. The 1980s and 1990s brought a new wave of avant-garde designers who were deeply influenced by postmodernism and deconstruction, movements that sought to break down traditional narratives and embrace complexity. Two of the most influential figures of this period are Issey Miyake and Rei Kawakubo of Comme des Garçons. Issey Miyake introduced fashion that was rooted in both traditional Japanese techniques and modern, experimental ideas. His pleats, specifically the Pleats Please line, combined cutting-edge technology with Eastern aesthetics, producing pieces that were simultaneously minimalist and sculptural. His designs often incorporated elements of Japanese culture, such as kimono shapes, while reinterpreting them in modern avant-garde ways. Rei Kawakubo and her brand, Comme des Garçons, were also key players in the avant-garde movement. Kawakubo rejected the traditional ideals of beauty and elegance in fashion, creating collections that embraced asymmetry, deconstruction, and even distressing of fabric. Her designs were often viewed as ugly or unwearable by mainstream critics, but they were praised for their intellectual and artistic qualities. She blurred the lines between fashion and art, challenging her audience to reconsider what clothes could symbolize. Today, avant-garde fashion continues to evolve, with designers such as Alexander McQueen, Rick Owens, and Heider Ackerman continuing to push the boundaries of what fashion can be. McQueen, for example, often used his runway shows as performance art, blurring the lines between fashion and theater. His work was full of powerful, thought-provoking imagery that questioned beauty, death, and the human body. Avant-garde fashion in the 21st century is no longer just about creating garments that are visually shocking or radically new. It's about using fashion as a medium to tell stories, provoke thought, and even make political statements. With the rise of sustainable fashion and the increasing use of technology in garment creation, avant-garde fashion is now more about questioning not just aesthetics, but also the systems and structures that underpin the fashion industry. Avant-garde fashion has always been more than just clothes. It's a radical intellectual pursuit that questions everything from societal norms to the very fabric of fashion itself. From its early days influenced by surrealism and futurism to its current reinvention through sustainable practices and digital fashion, avant-garde design continues to shape the industry. It represents not just the future of fashion, but also its power to challenge and redefine the world around us.